then welcome back to part 2. If you haven't seen part 1 of our recommendation series, I recommend that you go watch that and see all the stuff that we're recommending that you watch and read and just enjoy. So without further ado, let's get started. I don't know when we're gonna start on this. I think it might be school or something, so we'll see what it is actually when I edit things. So our next category is kind of school or school stories. For the anime, we decided to do Silver Spoon, since that is sort of set in a school situation. It's a little bit different.
It's a non-traditional school.
It is a non-traditional school. It's a bit different because there's an agricultural focus. So I went to a school out in the country, and so I don't live on a farm. I live in the city, so it's not like I can directly relate, but I could sort of relate with some of the things, and so I just really enjoyed it. So, and also it's the material it's based off of is written by
Muro Horikawa?
Yeah.
I may or may not be saying that name right.
That's why I had you say it, because I didn't know how to say it. Who did Full Metal Alchemist, which we all know and love. So if you haven't watched that one, watch that one. But yeah.
For real. I mean, for real.
Okay. For the book, we just kind of decided to do like an author. Andrew Clements. He's pretty solid. A lot of his work is more geared towards elementary, middle school age, but that's okay. And a lot of his stories are school stories, and they're written about kids who are in school, so.
Can we cover your business on that one?
Yeah. They're good, though. They're good.
They're very good.
Yes.
And the movie I chose was Mean Girls. I know this one is fairly well known. I just found it kind of funny as I didn't actually watch it until I was in college. So for romance, the book we chose was Beastly. I tend to never read, watch, or otherwise have anything to do with romance. Generally don't care.
Doesn't appeal.
But one of the romance novels I have read that it was really good was the novel Beastly.
It's by Alex Flynn. I actually know that.
Yes.
We forgot to look that up, so it's a good thing I know.
We know the author.
We do.
Author's name. We don't know the author personally.
We know.
I wish. One of the things that I like about this novel in particularly is it spends the first half of the novel focusing on character development rather than the romance.
For the movie, we decided to do While You Were Sleeping. It's kind of an older movie, so some of you may be a little bit more familiar with it, but I didn't watch it until like a couple of years ago. And it has Sandra Bullock in it, which is similar to Miss Congeniality.
It's the same actor.
It is the same actor.
Same actor? Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah. And it's, I don't know, I just really liked it, and it's kind of like a different, it's a classic, we'll just say that. Oh yeah, and then the anime we decided on was Kaichou Maid-sama, which is also The President is a Maid. And this is one that Kay and I both have watched, and you liked.
Yes.
Yeah. It's about the high school student body president who works part-time as a maid in a maid cafe to kind of support her family because she's not very well off. She doesn't really want the school to find out because at school she has like this big built-up appearance of like being this really strict student body president, and she feels like this would totally ruin her reputation, and I don't know if she is even allowed to take on a part-time job, so she's kind of going behind people's back on that. But then one of the boys at her school finds out about it, and so he just kind of like constantly visits her at the cafe, and she's like, is he gonna tell what's going on? Ah!
Comedy. Love this section. Alright, so for the anime, we chose Ouran High. And now I do realize that this isn't necessarily going to appeal to all anime lovers. It kind of appeals more to people that have watched the shoujo genre, as it does mock the vast majority, if not all, of the cliches and tropes of the genre. It's just an all-around pretty funny show. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It's pretty great. Watch it. Alright, the next movie is Mrs. Doubtfire. If you have not seen Mrs. Doubtfire, You need to rectify this at the earliest convenience. It has Robin Williams playing the main character, Mrs. Doubtfire. It has to be one of the funniest things I have ever watched in my whole life. And I think, honestly, it's probably my favorite work that he's been in.
And then for the book, I decided to put up Wednesday Wars by Gary D. Schmidt.
Because
reasons, yes. I mean, the book is really funny. Like, it's just flat out funny, guys. It's funny. You need to read it. But it also has a lot of other interesting little side notes. It's kind of based in, like, the 1960s, so you have, like, the whole Vietnam War controversy, counterculture thing going on. And kind of the reason it's called Wednesday Wars is your main character is a Presbyterian, and he's the only Presbyterian in his class. Everybody else is either Catholic or Jewish. So on Wednesday afternoons, everybody else leaves to go to their respective religious little catechism, bar mitzvah event things.
Stuff.
So, like, yeah. And so he's stuck with his homeroom teacher, and she has him read Shakespeare, and he's convinced that she hates him. And so why it's called Wednesday Wars. And there's a bunch of other things, and we considered putting it under the books for sports because we couldn't think of any other sports books, because he really likes baseball, and then he also participates in cross country.
So now this is a little bit more of a niche category. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Niche.
I have no clue.
Anyway, it's medical stuff. So being the nursing student, I will be talking about some of my favorite medical stuff. And for anime manga, I have Blackjack. And pretty much anything in the Blackjack franchise. There's a bunch of movies going back to, like, 70s and 80s, all the way up to, like, a few years ago. There's several series. There's, like, a recent reboot series. They're generally all pretty good, and they talk a lot about issues in the medical field, as well as each individual case. Now, not all of it is solid medical science. It is quite fictitious at times, but it really handles a lot of the dilemmas in the medical field, especially at the time that it was written, very well. I would recommend, before any of the movies or anything like that, to read the manga, because that is the author's true intention. And he talks a lot about the medical field and society at the time, especially focusing on racism, which was something not really seen at that time in Japan. So for the TV show, I kind of had a hard time because I'm not really a fan of medical dramas, because they tend to be less medical science and more drama. And being a nursing student, I'd rather have just medical stuff. But I didn't want to do, like, a documentary or something like that. So I chose The Night Shift. Well, it is kind of glorified, you know, everyone's hair and makeup's perfect, like, walking away from some disaster that happened. You know, it does focus a lot of the issues in the medical field, particularly the current issue of how expensive it is and how oftentimes people cannot afford medical care, and because of that, they can die from injuries that they should have not died from. And finally, for our books, now this is a nonfiction book, is Angels of the ER, written by Dr. Robert D. Leslie. It shows a collection of short stories from him working in the ER. You'll laugh, you'll cry, it's gonna be great. This one, again, it doesn't focus as much on medical science itself, but rather the stories of the medical field.
We're almost done. We only have one more category left. And that's fantasy, which is kind of, I guess it's my cup of tea. I really like the fantasy genre. It's got all sorts of fun stuff in it.
I don't.
You do like the fantasy
I
genre.
was like, I love it too.
Yeah, you agree with me. Yeah, see, we're in agreement. Okay. So the book I was going to put up is The Princess Curse by Mary Haskell. This is one that I talked about in the I don't remember what we called that video. It was like the 5
preview of
the preview of book
something.
reviews, So I have yet
We'll
to
link
get,
it.
Yeah.
Rob's.
Somewhere. I have yet to do like a review on it, and I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it because I kind of talked about it in that one, but it's just a compilation of the 7 dancing princesses. Or there's 12, I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure there's 12.
It's probably 12. That makes more sense. 7's a good number too, though.
7 dancing.
Essentially, there's 12 princesses. And then it's also a combination of Beauty and the Beast and all sorts of wonderful good things, and it's good. I promise.
The next one we recommend is the anime The Heroic Legend of Arslan, or I believe the Japanese is Arslan Senki. It is by Himoto Arikawa, or at least based on her works. It is the story about a prince trying to essentially take back his kingdom. I'm trying to figure out how to not spoil it. It's really good, okay?
There's a couple different versions out there, and the one by Himoto Arakawa is kind of the more recent one, and it's also kind of currently being animated as an anime series.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a manga and an anime.
And an anime, yeah. I was like, there's a really old anime movie.
Yeah.
That's the same story, because it's based off of, like, a Persian fairy tale, I think. Don't quote me, probably Google it to find out. And the last recommendation is Robin Hood. The Disney cartoon Robin Hood, to be more specific, because there's more than one Robin Hood. It does have a lower budget than some of their other animated movies, but it has one of the most underrated soundtracks, and it's just pretty fun, lighthearted, fantasy version of Robin Hood.
Because they're all animals.
Yeah, there's church mice.
Like literally church mice.
Literally. So in conclusion, I feel like we possibly could have repeated ourselves. We're just really big fans of these recommendations. So please just watch them.
Watch them, please. Thank you.
We put a pun in it. Just watch.